Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 169. Nice of I Wish You Were Dead, a podcast about things that used to be alive. My name is Mike, and that is Gavin. And Gavin, it's the Purge.
Excuse me?
According to all of my 8th graders, it's the Purge because the government is shut down and they don't know what that means. So they heard government shutdown and they just thought that there was no more laws or anything.
That's hilarious.
Then I went around. Actually, I probably shouldn't admit anything that I did once I realized they thought there was no laws. But we could say I had fun with that concept. I had fun with that concept for about 2 minutes in class before then telling them that, no, this does not mean there's the purge. However, in some ways, it's worse.
So, okay, maybe this is a deep cut. So what grade is that?
So I was teaching. So this was mostly 8th graders. My high schoolers also had no idea
Right,
what
but
a government shutdown was.
My first thought was, were 8th graders born when the first Purge movie came out?
Oh, when did the first Purge?
Because I'm like, 11th graders,
2014.
I would say probably.
I'm gonna say the Purge movies came out. Oh no, I was in high school. Hold on. I think I'll say 2011 was the first Purge movie.
You'll say, or did you look it up?
I'm looking it up now.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
That sounds.
Do you have a guess?
That sounds about right. I'd say. Yeah, I'll say like 2012.
2013 is when the first Purge movie came out. Did you know? There are 5 Purge movies with a 6th one set to come out at some point.
I was aware of 3. But that means so it came out 12 years ago. 8th graders are ballpark 13.
12 turning 13, yeah.
So some of them may not have been born. That's I hate that. Anyway,
you love to see the kids referencing stuff from before they were born.
I mean, hey, Jurassic Park came out 3 years before I was born. So
just one of my favorite things to do is to ask kids when they're wearing shirts of bands is just not to be like the name 3 songs guy.
Sure.
But just to be like, are you a fan of that band or are you just wearing the shirt? Like 60% of the time it's, I just like the shirt.
Cool.
Okay. And that's fine. People can do whatever they want to do.
Hey, you're honest
break my heart
about
a little bit.
Good on you, man.
Yeah. 100%.
Anywho, this is a paleontology podcast.
What?
Yeah, so we have a little bit of a topic about the government shutdown, just very quick, adjacent to government shutdown things. Then Mike, I'm sure, has a Today in History and or is currently looking one up.
Oh, I got one ready to go.
All right. But since
one of the most important events in American history happened today, actually.
Interesting. Okay. And since you've probably noticed Fia's not here, she is still, on that grad school grind and also taking a trip to Australia soon. So she's going to be giving us some field reporting from that. So we'll look forward to that. She'll be back with us eventually. But
by the way, I can absolutely hear Fia developing an Australian accent and never coming back.
I don't even know what Fia with an Australian accent would sound like.
It would sound awesome is what it would sound like.
That's true. I do love Australian accents.
Dude, Australian, that's
it's one of the
best version.
One of the
English.
best.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so I will take the liberty of doing the housekeeping and then we'll go to a Today in History. So
good thing, because I don't even know what you guys say.
Yeah, do not forget to rate the show on whatever platform you listen to us on and to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube to give us feedback on the show and suggest any future topics you'd like to hear us talk about on the pod. If you'd like to be a guest on the pod, make sure to fill out our guest form, which can be found down below in the show notes. As for next episode, there's not a soul on this earth who knows what that episode is going to be. It's an episode that ends in 0, which means it's a Mike Takes the Wheel episode.
Correct.
So I think it will be give or take 14 days until anybody knows what that topic is. So
that's entirely fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's all I've got for you on that one. There's a good chance. There's a good chance that I'm looking it up while we're recording, like while we're doing housekeeping.
I did that a little bit last episode, so I can't fault you too hard.
Yeah, that's fair. You also have episodes to do a little bit more frequently than me, but regardless.
Anyway,
thank you for the housekeeping. What happens now? Do I do my thing?
Sure do. So on October 15th, what happened?
So October 15th in history. I'm trying to think of exactly how I want to game plan this year, but Gavin, start naming some famous Americans.
Famous Americans. Can you give me like a ballpark time?
No.
Okay. George Washington. Um, actually, can we turn this into like a 20 questions?
I'm going to say keep going down the line of thought you were just on.
Okay. Ben Franklin.
No.
Farther away or closer?
Further.
Okay. Um, John Quincy Adams.
Closer.
Jefferson.
Further.
Hamilton.
Further.
So John Quincy Adams was the closest?
Depending on how you want to define close, yeah.
John Adams.
Further.
See, the presidents between Adams and Lincoln are just gone.
Thank you. So Abraham Lincoln, famous Americans we're talking about here today. You started off with Washington, and I'm like, he's going to go Washington, Lincoln, and we're going to get there on the second guess.
No. I was trying to do it chronological, and then I was like, very quickly, I was like, oh, I cannot do that.
Well, right. When I say famous Americans, I don't need too many people to tell me about Franklin Pierce.
Sure.
All right. I don't really care what Martin Van Buren was getting up to. All right. When you think of Lincoln, what do you think of? And don't give me any of the nerd. Oh, that's my one swear for the episode about like slavery, the Civil War. Yeah. So none of that stuff.
Okay. Being assassinated.
No.
I know he was a lawyer.
Just by looking at the guy.
He's got a great beard.
So, in 1860, on October 15th, 1860. I don't know if you know this story, but an 11-year-old girl named Grace Goodall wrote to Abraham Lincoln while he's running for president and said, "Hey Lincoln, you're ugly as all hell. You really need a beard." And so, Lincoln, if you've ever seen pictures of Lincoln in 1860, he's got like the cheekbones.
He is kind of an odd-looking guy without the beard.
Yeah, doesn't have a beard, and then all of a sudden, this girl tells him to write a beard, and I think he starts growing that beard in like December or so after he had been elected, but before
That's
he
hilarious.
had taken office. Yeah, so 11-year-old Grace Bednell.
Can we also talk about how your lead up to this was that it was one of the most important things in American history?
Can you imagine 16th President Abraham Lincoln without a beard? That changes the course of history.
We've had a lot of strange looking presidents, though, to be fair.
Yeah, so I mean, if we want to go down this road here, grading on a curve, but who's the hottest president?
See, I've only been alive for like 5 or 6 of them. So like,
okay, there's other presidents that were hot before, or like hot for a president.
I don't know.
I mean, I think your obvious contenders are Obama, Kennedy.
I feel like Kennedy kind of runs away with it, if I'm honest.
Kennedy, yeah, I mean, he's got all those health problems, but also he was Kennedy.
And also, well, he was young. That's also...
He was, right, he was young. Teddy Roosevelt has that same thing. He's also got like the outdoorsman kind of charm.
Yeah, that's true.
People called Franklin Pierce Handsome Frank. You can look that up and see for yourself if you decide to, to go along with that. But yeah, not too many attractive presidents, and I think that's a failure in this country's history.
All right.
And before anybody writes in to say Richard Nixon, it's because there was one picture of him on a football field when he was younger. Don't give me any of that Nixon crap. All right, Gavin, what are we talking about today?
Well, first, I want to do a real quick administration update. As Mike mentioned, the government's currently shut down.
Yes, it is, and it's not going to be done anytime soon.
No. There's no end in sight to that. Although we are...
To be fair, these things never had an end in sight until like 3 hours before there's an end in sight.
Right. So we're recording this at about 9:00 p.m. on the 13th, on Columbus Day / Indigenous Peoples Day. And so it may already be over, who knows. But anywho, this past weekend, I had kind of the strange experience of going to a national park during a government shutdown.
I'm kind of jealous, actually.
That it was more normal than I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So there were people at the entrance station, like rangers, and they basically, we stopped and everything, and they were like, "We're not allowed to process payments, so go on ahead." So we did not have to pay to enter the park. I believe that parks are just going to be shut down in the next week or so. I think the administration has put that out.
That's going to be an interesting. How do we enforce that? But okay.
I mean, a lot of them have gates.
people are
Right, but I feel like that will limit just a lot of it.
sure. That's
Especially
fair.
especially for some of the more remote ones. Like,
Was trash starting to pile up?
no, but that's because there was a specific thing. Mike and I were just talking about this interesting factoid before we started recording. So, if you've ever been to a national park or national monument or something run by the National Park Service, most of them have a gift shop.
Mm-hmm.
That is not run at all by the park service.
This sounds insane to me, for the record.
The people working behind the counter are not rangers. They're not employees of the government, of the park service, whatever. Each park, with a couple of exceptions that share one, have basically an NGO, a nonprofit, that runs anything inside the park that makes money. So the people collecting the entrance fee at the front, those are employees of the federal government. The people at, selling you hot dogs at Yellowstone are not. And so that, because I mentioned that the gift shop at the visitor center was open, and Mike was like, "Yeah, of course it is." And I was like, "I mean, not necessarily, because that's not the government." And Mike was like, "What do you mean it's not the government?" But
I'm I'm still not entirely sure I believe you.
and I don't know exactly. I'm sure it's in a statute somewhere that the park can't make money other than entrance fees. But
Which is not the American way.
No, to be fair. I also was very surprised when I learned this, but somebody had was talking to one of the rangers in the visitor center, giving out information and things, and they were like, "I'm so sorry, you guys are not getting paid right now. And you have to be here. That sucks."
Mm-hmm.
And the guy was like, "I mean, we actually are getting paid." And a couple of us around were like, "What do you mean? What?"
Yeah.
And he was like, "Yeah, basically the nonprofit that runs the gift shop and things is paying them. They have a reduced staff right now, or less hours.
Sure.
But the nonprofit that runs the gift shops and things is paying them, at least on a limited basis. Obviously, we didn't get too much into the details, whether they're getting full pay, full hours, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, this is just the one park. I don't know if this is the case for every park, but at least for the time being, the folks at Shenandoah National Park are getting some kind of pay. So that at least made me feel a little better being there.
And while you were there, and we do have to get to the actual episode in a second,
Yeah.
but just give me a quick 2 sentences on Shenandoah. It's supposed to be magnificent.
Oh, it was very pretty. If you like to hike and do things, this is probably the only time of year that I would go there. I'm sure it's very humid the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm.
But it was extremely pretty. The leaves were very pretty. We weren't quite there at peak fall time, red brown colors of the leaves, but it was
right.
very pretty. Very lots of outlooks. The main sort of stretch of it is this road that's 100 or so miles long called Skyline Drive. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's just a long road that winds through the Blue Ridge Mountains there, and there's lots of overlooks to look out into the Shenandoah Valley, and it's just very pretty. It's what you would want a non-deserty national park to be.
I am very jealous. I have been to 3 national parks, and 2 of which were with you. So, one of these days, and the third one I went to, I don't quite want to name it because I don't want to be too mean, but it wasn't worth it. Didn't look like a super cool national park before I got there, and I was right.
I'll cut this out.
Or you can bleep it and see if anyone can guess it.
Okay, yeah.
It was.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree.
Yeah. That one I went to, and I was like, this could have been a county park.
Yeah, for sure.
There's some nice spots, but there's no need for this to...
Yep.
Anyways.
Anyway.
All right.
Yeah,
so
main topic.
That's some other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a paleontology podcast.
Yeah, although there's not going to be a whole lot of paleontology in this episode because we're talking about a person.
Okay.
We're talking about a all things considered for this podcast, recent person. But
when did this person die?
2 weeks ago.
Oh.
So we are keeping our rule.
Yes.
Of we can only talk about people who are dead on this podcast.
Yes.
So, Mike, do you have a guess who we're talking about?
It's the yes. It's the chimp lady. Is it
Yes.
Goodall? Jane Goodall, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
So,
I
yes.
just yeah. All right. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about her. I don't know much about her other than she was reasonably influential. And like was famous in a way that scientists don't get famous anymore.
Yeah.
Which is I think before you mean we're doing this before you even get going. I feel like this is a loss, just like in society, that
For sure.
like there just aren't famous scientists anymore. You think of Bill Nye and Neil deGrasse Tyson. They've been famous for a long time, and they're more science communicators. I know they're
Right.
both do science stuff, but they're more famous for their communication than their actual science.
Right.
So, anyways, I would love to hear more about this.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jane Goodall is easily one of the most famous scientists of my lifetime. If you ask a random person on the street to name a few famous scientists, she's probably not the first one. People will say,
Hmm.
they'll probably say someone like Bill Nye, Neil deGrasse Tyson. But I would
Einstein.
say for sure top 10, probably top 5.
Probably top like one or two women that people would wind up
Yes.
naming. Like, if you said, hey, name a scientist, and then we're just like, had them keep naming until they finally got to a woman. Like, maybe Marie Curie, maybe, um,
Yeah.
you know, like even me right now. Yeah, Jane Goodall.
Yeah. And so she is most famous for her work studying chimpanzee behavior in various parts of Kenya and Tanzania mostly. Um,
Hmm.
and for completely changing what we thought animals were capable of. So, not just chimpanzees, cool, chimpanzees, important conservation good, but just
Hmm.
the our society's like whole idea of what an animal can be and can do.
All right, so let's hear about like are you going to set the stage before she was
Yes.
ever around?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
So, sadly, as we've talked about, she passed away recently. She died on October 1st, 2025. So, literally 2 weeks ago on the day this comes out. So let's take some time to talk about her work. But first, as always in geology and paleontology, we need some context. So, setting the stage, uh, going back just a little bit to the 300s BC or so, there was this guy, you might have heard of him, named Aristotle.
Sure.
He
Couldn't
wrote,
tell you a thing about him.
yeah, he wrote a book called The History of Animals, basically one of the first comparative anatomy and zoology books ever. Um, Not going to go too much into it. Very fascinating history. People think of Aristotle mostly as like a philosopher. He was like an incredible early scientist. And so,
Wasn't he wrong about everything?
oh
Like,
yeah,
didn't we
for
like?
sure. But just like
Okay,
the way he thought about things
right.
set up literally everything for like how modern science works. He got the ball rolling for most fields of especially natural science.
Okay.
And so based on this book, some related works by other Greek authors like Plato and the Bible, scholars and theologians in medieval Europe, so we're now in early thousands AD, came upon a
Hmm.
concept called the Scala Naturae, commonly called the Great Chain of Being. Basically, it's a hierarchy of beings that they believed had been decreed by God. So basically, imagine like a ladder, like a wooden ladder.
Hmm.
God, top rung of the ladder, easy. Next step down, angels, then humans. Then the next few rungs are occupied by various animals, with like more active and mobile ones being toward the top, like mammals and birds. Then less active ones at the bottom, like turtles, worms, bivalves, there. Then plants, and then lastly, minerals.
Sure.
So basically, as you go up the ladder, you get
Hmm.
better, more in God's image.
This definitely sounds like some early like what would have passed as science at the time stuff.
Right. Well, this is like at the time, like sort of like just barely pre-Renaissance, where they were really starting to get back into all the stuff from ancient Greece and Rome.
Okay.
And so, in Aristotle's day, he was just making observations and writing stuff down. He was like, oh, these animals all happen to have 5 fingers and toes. They all happen to have 2 bones in their forearm and their shins.
Mm-hmm.
That's weird. So he was just making observations. No, religiosity, involved really. And so,
Mm-hmm.
From a human's perspective, humans are the most active form of life, particularly like mentally active. So we sort of placed them at the top because of that, but had no like creation overtones to it. And so it was during the European Middle Ages when all that God ordained view of it got sort of put on top of that.
Sure.
And so this persisted into the Renaissance and also informed the work of a lot of famous people like Carl Linnaeus. His famous book, Systema Naturae, that's where we get many of the names that we use in our modern taxonomy, like Animalia, Reptilia, etc. And so this is where the concept of, if you've ever played like the old like handheld like 20 questions game, where it'll ask you, is it an animal, mineral, or a vegetable? That comes from this.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so over those, several hundred years of like the Middle Ages through the Renaissance, this concept sat very solidly in the minds of people that humans were both separate from and superior to the animals and plants around us, because God made us closer in his image than those things.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Sure.
and so the validity of that great chain of being kind of started to fall apart in like the late 1800s into the 1900s, as our understanding of natural selection and evolution got better, and we realized that scientifically we are just in fact a group of animals.
Mm-hmm.
However, our view of ourselves, the science aside, how we think of ourselves, as unique and superior to other animals, is kind of hard to shake. Because they don't live the same ways we do. They don't think the same ways that we do. They don't talk like we do, which, because we're the ones doing them, we see as superior to the things that they do. And historically, this has been supported mostly by the main examples being like language, use of tools, planning ahead, showing emotions, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And even today, people kind of bristle at the implication that humans are just another type of animal. But because of the work of Jane Goodall, among many others, far more people are open to that suggestion than they used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Or that animals
and you can understand
yeah.
at a glance the hesitation of people
Yeah.
being like, wait a minute. But yeah.
Yeah, and we'll get into that a little bit when we talk about Jane's legacy as well. So, with that context, Jane Goodall. So, Jane Goodall was born April 3rd, 1934, in London, England. She lived a pretty normal, like, middle-class life. Her dad was a businessman. Did not go into further details, just business. But her mother was a novelist. And she developed a love of animals like super early on in her life. Apparently, when she was little, her dad gave her a stuffed chimpanzee instead of like a teddy bear, which her mom and her friends thought would give her nightmares for some reason.
As it turns out,
Jane named it Jubilee, and she kept it all throughout her life, talking about still having it on her dresser in one of the books she wrote in 2000. So she had this thing for probably close to 80 years, at least.
Wow.
Yeah. So she was, even from a very young age, a very avid reader. Back in the 40s, there wasn't probably a whole lot else to do. Not much else to do when you're hiding from the Blitz in the London tunnels. And so, around when she was 8 years old, she had read several books in the Tarzan series, which I did not realize was, like, more than one book. But apparently it is. Which made her someday dream about visiting Africa and seeing all the animals that she was reading about.
Mm-hmm.
And so around 1954, so sort of flash forward, she just graduated the British equivalent of high school. Um,
Yeah,
I don't know what they call
whatever
it.
the Brits call it over there.
Yeah.
Schooling McSchoolface.
Well, I know they also have different number of years. I think they might have an extra year compared to us, but I don't know that for sure.
They also just have weird words for stuff over there.
Yeah. But yeah, so in 1954, she had graduated high school, but couldn't afford to go to college, so she attended like a secretary school and got really good at typing and bookkeeping. And all the while working as a waitress and even working for a documentary film company for a little bit. Didn't really see too much details about what exactly she did for them. Probably just secretary and bookkeeping work. But she basically saved every penny she could to travel to Africa. And when she was 23, she had saved up enough money to be able to go visit a family friend who had moved to a farm outside of Nairobi, Kenya. So, definitely worth noting during this time that the British Empire was still doing British Empire things in Africa.
I mean, yeah.
So, the British colonization of Kenya and Tanzania was pretty brutal, as you might imagine. Without going into too much detail, Jane Goodall first came to Kenya during a period called the Mau Mau Rebellion. Basically, local people were like, hey, Brits, get out of here. War crimes were committed all around, both sides. But in the end, the people with the better guns won, the British. And so thousands and thousands of people were put in concentration camps and tortured and killed and starved, etc. The British tried to get rid of all the files about it by burning them or throwing them into the ocean. Tough. So that was all happening in various parts of Kenya when Jane Goodall got there the first time. And so she went to visit this friend in 1954, or 57. And back then, there were no flights to or from Kenya. So she got on a boat for a few weeks and arrived in Kenya and got a job as a secretary. And for those that are geographically challenged, Kenya and Tanzania also, which will come up in a bit, are on the eastern coast of Africa. So if you can picture sort of where Madagascar is, that big island off the eastern coast of Africa, they're sort of opposite that and a little more to the north. So not fully across that little gap of ocean from Madagascar, just a bit north of that. And so she was staying with this friend on their farm outside Nairobi, and she was working a secretary job, and just on some advice from her friend, she basically cold called a scientist in the region named Louis Leakey. If you've never heard of him, he and his wife...
That's me.
Yeah. He and his wife Mary are some of the most famous scientists of the 1900s.
What kind of science were they doing?
Mostly studying primates. Shocker. But especially their fossils, mostly focusing on human fossils. Most of the things that we know about human evolution in Eastern Africa, or just Africa generally, is from them. And so, Lewis was born in Kenya, lived there pretty much his whole life, and was really interested in just all of the human fossils and our evolutionary history there. Jane honestly just wanted to talk about animals with him. She was like, here's this animal expert. I came here to talk about and see animals. I just want to talk to this guy. Was not looking for a job or anything. Just wanted an intellectual chat. However, Leakey really liked her and offered her a job as a secretary for him at the museum that the Leakeys ran. And so at this point, Jane had no real, higher education, right? She did not go to college.
Right.
She was just someone who loved animals and was incredibly curious, and she happened to find herself working every day next to one of the most famous biologists in the world at the time.
So, obviously the answer to these is always a little bit of both. This is more luck than skill than how she got her start here? That she winds up working, or
yes and no. Yes, in that, if Louis Leakey had been, sick the day she called, or, he was just in a bad mood or for whatever reason, her career may not have happened. That's absolutely true. But she was truly, like, in just reading a lot of her quotes and listening to a lot of her interviews, which I've just done separate from, doing this, background for this episode.
Right.
She's just genuinely an incredibly curious person. And,
Mm-hmm.
like, she is a perfect case for, even if you don't have the training of, like, a professional scientist, if you have the mindset and the curiosity, you're better off than most professional scientists.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Or I'll say at least many professional scientists.
Right.
And so it truly was just her curiosity and talent. And then, as we'll see, her willingness to kind of be like, the way everyone's currently doing things is stupid. I'm going to do it my way and see how it goes. But yeah, so she spent all her days asking him all these questions that she'd ever had about animals.
Mm-hmm.
And so Lewis and Mary decided, after a little while of Jane working for them, that she should come out on a dig with them. They brought her to a place called Oldupai Gorge in the British colony that would become Tanzania. Basically, like I said, next door to the south of Kenya on that eastern coast of Africa. And this place, Oldupai Gorge, is one of the most famous and important paleontological sites in the world. It has the nickname the Cradle of Mankind because it has a nearly continuous record of humans and our relatives from about 1.9 million years ago through until Homo sapiens.
Okay.
And so they took her out on this dig, and she had a wonderful time. She has lots of stories about it, about the first time she saw a lion was at this site, and it was kind of stalking her. They wouldn't let her go out without a pair of dogs that were like hunting dogs to protect them from the lions.
Sure.
And so after a while of having these conversations about animals and watching her work with the fossils, Leniki decided he wanted to give her a different job. So he'd been looking for somebody to send out into the field to observe chimpanzee behavior in the wild, which had never really been done before. It was mostly, hey, capture these chimpanzees, stick them in a zoo, and that's what they'd been observing, behavior-wise, which obviously is not how they normally behave. And so he kind of had the hypothesis that chimpanzee behavior was probably the most similar thing that you're going to be able to realistically find to early human behavior. And, early human stuff was sort of his shtick. So he wanted somebody to be able to do that. But he was like, I can't leave my fossils. I need to find somebody else to go do that for me.
Right.
And so he thought that Jane was just the right person for the job with her curiosity and her, attention to detail and like bookkeeping and secretarial skills.
And how old is she at this time?
So let's see. She is ballpark 25.
Okay.
And so, but before sending her out into the field or anything, he wanted her to get a little bit of an education just so she had like the proper terminology and everything. So he paid for her to go take some classes at Cambridge in London. So he shipped her to London, took some classes, and then she came back in 1960.
Okay.
So she arrived back in Africa, ready to head out into the wilderness of Tanzania. And so at the time, women working in the field was unusual, particularly working alone. So in order for the local British government to let her do it, she had to bring her mom along. Why her mother? I don't know. But her mom made a couple trips out with her. And then she also had a videographer who would come out with her, not quite at first, but she ended up later marrying the videographer for a while. But she stayed in Tanzania for a number of years, living in the jungle in a place that is now Gombe Stream National Park in Tanzania, just observing the chimps there. And so between 1960 and 1966, she basically traveled back and forth between Tanzania and London, working on her PhD at Cambridge, despite having no lower degree, which was very unusual for the time. But the Leakeys
Where
had
this isn't one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, back then, like that was
no,
just a
no, no,
thing
no.
you could do, but you can't do now. Like even back then, that's not a thing that happened.
Right. But the Leakeys had that kind of sway that they were like, no, you know, she's going to get into
Trust
this.
us on this one, guys.
Trust us on this one. She's fine. Um, and again, this was like you're kind of saying, yes, that talent is obviously there, but a little bit that luck that like, if this was not the Leakeys, two of the most famous scientists in the world vouching for her
Right.
like this, if this was still like a good scientist, but not the Leakeys, that they might not have had as much sway to get her into a place like Cambridge.
Right, and that's like when I said that, obviously she had all the skill in the world, but like you can have all the skill in the world, and if you don't happen to become buddies with some of the most famous and best scientists in the world, you are not going to be able to get as far as quickly.
Right. So over the years, she would be joined in like Leakey's sort of broad research group by two other young
Hmm.
women, named Diane Fossey and Birute Galdikis. The
Sure.
three of them would become close friends. Jane mostly worked with chimps. Diane Fossey worked with gorillas in Rwanda, which is in Central Africa, and Birute would be working with orangutans in Borneo. So basically, the three different types of non-human great apes. And the three of them would often be referred to as the trimates, which I think was very fun. So also during this time, while she was working on her PhD, in 1961, Tanzania gained its independence from Britain. Apparently, according to Jane, this made it actually quite a bit easier for her to do her fieldwork. The British officials did not want a woman just traipsing around in the jungle. But after gaining independence, the Tanzanian government didn't really want to let a bunch of white male researchers into the country. But they were like, oh,
Sure.
based on how Jane told it, a young defenseless woman couldn't possibly do too much harm. So they just kind of let her do whatever she wanted. But a big part of that is that she built up relationships with local communities around her research area and, local, new government officials that, she had like a good relationship with them and respected them, and they supported her research quite a lot. Chimpanzee troops move around a lot. They can be kind of hard to find. And so building these relationships with, the local peoples there, while on their land, is how to not do British colonialism and colonial science.
Yeah.
And so if you want more on that, see episodes 33 and 138 for some of my favorite episodes that we've done, some really great guest episodes with people who do research currently in other countries, for, how to do research in particularly like lower income places well. And so after her PhD, she spent decades living in Africa studying these chimpanzees and did her research in a really novel way, basically describing them and their behavior as if they were people. Because basically,
what a concept.
Basically, immediately, she was like, I can't just describe what they're doing without making them sound like people because they're doing people things. And so she also gave them names instead of numbers, which was kind of taboo at the time because then the idea was like, well, then you're kind of emotionally invested, which supposedly at the time...
Not a crazy concern, I would say.
Right. Is that you basically doing things that other people would see as affecting her objectivity. She would refer to them as having various human emotions like happiness and sadness, and interpreting various behaviors like you would in humans. She also interacted with them and basically earned their trust, and as far as I could find, became the only person to ever be like accepted into their society. This particular group of chimps saw her as one of them, and not just like, hello, slightly different chimpanzee. They were like, no, you are one of our chimpanzees. And so that also kind of got a lot of criticism, because by being there among them, not observing them from afar with binoculars and stuff, like everybody else did, her just being there might make them act differently, so like not unreasonable concerns.
Right. And I imagine some of this was also like the sexism of the time. and whatnot, that like, oh, this, this woman's putting emotion into science and rah, but
Sure.
like to try and take a step back from that, not crazy things to want to make sure that you have a handle on.
And I think some of it also was just people trying to find ways to discredit what her conclusions were,
Sure.
which we'll get into in just a second. But so this earned a
Hmm.
lot of criticism from the establishment, not seen as objective, which is kind of like a major requirement in science, right?
Hmm.
And so from her perspective, you couldn't watch these animals closely without seeing emotions and personalities. So that's what she described. She's like, this is what I'm seeing. This is what it is.
Right.
And her observations just completely changed not just how we understand chimpanzees, but also ourselves. Firstly, it was known, for sure, guaranteed at the time, that only humans make and use tools. That was kind of the whole human shtick. No other animal could have been smart enough to think ahead and plan for what the tool would be used for, stuff like that. But Jane was able to watch chimpanzees just pluck a blade of grass and pull out, use it to stick it in a termite mound.
Hmm.
Termites would bite onto the grass, they'd pull it up, and then they'd just like slurp off the piece of grass and basically use it to fish for termites.
Hmm.
Not only that, they would take a stick, they'd break like a twig off of a tree, they would pluck all the leaves off of it to make it smoother, and then use the stick to fish for termites. And so, from a human perspective, that may not sound impressive.
However,
But
like,
clearly,
hmm,
they had learned that A, taking the stick or taking the leaves off the stick makes it work better. So they
hmm,
had to reason like, okay, stick with less leaves, good. I can take the leaves off the stick, that makes it better. And likely through trial and error figured this out. And then, on top of that, they taught each other about it and how to modify and use the stick in this way. So this is something that, up till this time, we were positive that only humans could do. But here was this lesser creature doing it. Her research also documented, less important for like the broader mindset, but that chimps weren't strictly herbivorous like we had thought they were. Obviously, there's the termites,
hmm.
but for whatever reason, partially eating insects doesn't seem to qualify an animal as being omnivorous. I don't know.
It feels like we should have an episode about that because that
To,
seems
to
like
me, it
words don't
does.
mean what I think they mean.
Yeah, to me, it does. But for the most part, when people only consider like meat from vertebrates traditionally to be like carnivorous, anyway. But she was the first one to document them intentionally like hunting and killing monkeys.
Okay.
And she was like, yeah, it was actually like really gnarly to watch. Like I kind of hated that. Um, um,
Has she given an interview where she said that? Because I kind of wish I could see that.
I mean, she's obviously much more elegant and British about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's given several interviews where she talks about the first time she saw them hunt and kill a monkey because it's quite brutal.
Hmm.
Because they don't use any tools for that. That is purely hands and teeth.
Yep. That's just brute force.
Yep. But I think the most important thing that she did was show that non-human animals were capable of like complex emotion.
Hmm.
Obviously, anybody who has a dog knows that animals have feelings.
Yes.
But at the time, more complex emotions like love, joy, grief, rage, hatred, those things, just like the tools, were known to be uniquely human. And for some animals and some emotions, that is true. Like my pet gecko, I don't really think she's capable of feeling rage, you know,
Hmm.
or at least no intent behind it. But at the time, all animals were viewed that way. And so Jane was able to observe them doing things like giving each other hugs, kissing, tickling, pats on the back, very human gestures, and
Mm-hmm.
things like that in their social groups. And this idea that if we just watched them behave in their natural habitat, chimpanzees do many of the things that we thought were unique to us really kind of shook the world, not just of researchers, but of the whole world more broadly. Because what other animals, what if other animals are more like us than we thought? What kind of ethical implications does that have for how we treat animals? You know, and
Mm-hmm.
to that effect, regarding Jane's first sort of round of findings, Louis Leakey, again one of the most famous scientists in the world at the time, so a lot of weight behind it, said we must now redefine man, redefine tool, or accept chimpanzees as human.
Is that a quote?
That is a quote.
That's a great quote. And when he said that, like, I bet you he was looking at himself in the mirror, like, "Oh, that's a good one."
In fact, the quote has an exclamation point at the end of it. So I think he was on board with being like, yeah, sure, chimps are human. Why not?
Yep.
Um, and so that is kind of the big thing, is just changing how we view any animal to be like, and really trying to have us have a societal conversation of how do we treat animals in general.
Mhm.
Chimpanzees are a really obvious case because they are so much like us.
Mhm.
But after she kind of got this fame and notoriety working with the chimpanzees, in sort of her later career, she started to turn to like the rest of animals. And,
And I
wow,
didn't know much about that. Like, for me, it was always just chimps, but
yeah. So throughout her life, she still continued. I don't know when exactly she stopped, going out into the field, but,
October 1st, 2025.
maybe. But so she was 91 when she died. So I imagine there was a point where she was like, I just can't, go hike through the forest anymore. Um, but so she did that for a very long time. But once she kind of got famous, she used that to sort of just sort of reinforce that idea of like animals generally are much more like us than we want to think, and to
Mhm.
encourage people to have those internal thoughts about what are you okay doing to something that is a lot like you. Um, and so in the later part of her life, she became very famous for her advocacy for various things. The way I put it is that she basically became what PETA wants to be. Uh, PETA bad. PETA is not a good organization. We don't have time to get into it, but look it up. Not a great organization. Um, and so,
Looking forward to the comments on this video.
yeah, whatever. Um, so the first thing that comes to mind besides chimpanzees is probably just conservation broadly. She did things like worked with NASA to use satellite images to aid in conservation and reforestation efforts across various parts of the world, like Africa and Southeast Asia. She did a lot of work for ethical treatment of animals, both in like laboratory settings, but also just food and farm settings. She was
Mhm.
vegetarian for most of her life. She became a vegan in 2021 and wrote a vegan cookbook that year.
So in your mid 80s, you make that kind of a dietary change.
Yep. She wrote books about the lives of farm animals and, can we ethically eat animals that are smarter than a lot of people think they are?
Mhm.
Did a lot of work to get companies to stop using animals, particularly primates, in product testing. So much so that in 2014, she wrote an open letter to the executives of a French airline chastising them for transporting monkeys to research laboratories. She advocated for a new category of international crime called ecocide, which
Wow, okay.
generally would make it illegal to destroy nature on large scales, like, deforesting the Amazon to make cattle pastures in Brazil, for example. She was basically everywhere.
Mhm.
Anywhere that she thought, you know, she could that would help her send her message to as many people as possible of treating animals in the world better than we currently are, she would go there. She gave speeches at hundreds of universities and charities all over the world, helped set up various nonprofits in Australia, South America, obviously Europe, Africa.
Mm-hmm.
She played herself on an episode of The Simpsons in 2019. She played herself on an episode of The Wild Thornberrys in 2001.
Wild Thornberry slaps. I went
Great
back and
show.
rewatched the first episode or
Fantastic show.
two recently as an adult, which my sister made fun of me for. I don't care. Wild
It's such a
Thornberry
good show.
slaps.
Yeah. In 2023, Apple TV released a show called Jane, which the Jane Goodall Institute sort of helped advise about a young girl named Jane. It's not supposed to be Jane Goodall, but
it could be anyone named Jane.
Yeah. Going around the world to save endangered species with her friend David and a chimpanzee named Greybeard. One of Jane Goodall's main research chimpanzees was named David Greybeard.
Okay.
Jane herself appeared in the final episode of the show that was released this year, less than 6 months ago.
Goodness gracious.
She was about that life right up until she died. And I think, this is kind of where my notes end, so this is just kind of me vamping at this point. Basically, I'm sure that there were some, because like I said, her sort of first round of findings came out in, like the mid to late 60s. And obviously, like, when I think of, like, hippies, I think of the 60s.
As we all do.
And so there was very much like a, return to nature kind of hippy-dippy, cultural vibe in the 60s. But I feel like a lot of it, talk about animals specifically, the modern, like, movement of, like, veganism or just treating animals a lot more like, frankly, like we treat people, or like we like to, like we like to think we treat people.
Worded carefully.
Yeah. I don't think that would really have been possible without Jane Goodall and her just, like, showing, not just through, like, white papers and stuff either, but like footage, just camera footage of chimps walking, like, occasionally walking around on their hind feet, sticking a stick into a termite mound. I did that as a kid with ants, not termites, but and just watching them do things that you can't help but see them do and be like, that's a thing I would do. That's a thing I've done. And her then, like, aggressively taking that next step and being like, yeah, and we kill these. We kill them and we cut down their homes, and maybe we should stop. Because if we thought this for so long about chimpanzees that they couldn't possibly be like us, what else are we wrong about with all these other animals?
Not a fun conversation that a lot of people want to have, but one that a lot of people need to be aware of.
Yeah. And, God, I am not morally strong enough to be vegan. I was vegetarian for a little while, but just doing the research for this episode made me want to give it a shot again. But yeah, so this was a real joy to sort of just read through all of the stuff that she's done. She's given an ungodly number of hours of interviews, hundreds of hours of interviews. So if you have some free time this week, just look up Jane Goodall interview and just listen to her talk, because she truly was so passionate and kind and caring. And I think the world is infinitely worse off now that she's gone.
And I think that's a perfect note to end it on. This has been episode 169 of I Wish You Were Dead, a podcast about things that used to be alive. My name is Mike. That was Gavin. Hopefully Thea is with us next week. And hopefully you are with us whenever we decide to put out our next episode. But until then, take care, everybody.
This episode of I Wish You Were Dead was written by Gavin Davidson and hosted by Gavin Davidson, Mike Bryson, and Finella Campanino. It was sound edited and edited for YouTube by Gavin Davidson. Special thanks to former guests of the pod and to listeners like you.